even when the branding may not have been on point, the heart and the mission never wavered. That I'm going out to help people. I'm going out and I wish that the brand was fully polished and, looked this certain way and checked all these, boxes. But as a human, as an authentic self, you can't always show up that way, but you can always show up with the same intention and heart. And I think that, that it really spoke to me of, those frazzled days, to just focus on, is my heart right? Is my intention right? Am I doing the right thing? All right, well, then the other stuff doesn't really matter. And to take that deep breath and just focus back on what really does matter.
All right. Hello, everybody. It is Friday. It is 1 o'clock. Rob and Debbie are trying to figure out technical difficulties, but we are live. It is Friday. It is fourth Friday. So this week we're talking about intentionality. We're continuing to focus on mental health awareness. And I wanted to start today. Oh, we got a sound. Okay, we got sound figured out. Yeah, if you have if you're watching the YouTube in the room, you got to mute your phone or device. I wanted to start today with something that was introduced to me some time ago, and it's the idea of just collectively taking a deep breath. And so if everybody would indulge me and just take a deep breath in and then let it out. And the interesting thing about breath is that we are always breathing. If you're not breathing, you're not with us anymore. So we're always breathing, but we are not always doing it intentionally. And just now, when I encouraged everybody to take that deep breath, we switched from that subconscious breathing to the consciously, intentionally breathing. And so a big aspect of today's conversation is intentionality around mental health awareness, around the spaces that we occupy. And our topic is carrying it well, mostly. And so I'm really excited to just kind of hear from everybody, like how this lands, how you navigate this in life, because there's a lot of things that we carry that nobody knows about, that nobody sees, and how that shows up in your life, and how do you process that personally, internally, externally, and all of those things. So as we do each week, we're going to go around the table and introduce everybody that's in the room. And I'm going to start to my left with the most beautiful woman I've ever met.
Well, that's not professional.
I'm Melissa Biron with Thrive Wellness, and what I do is help others with metabolic stability. And what that can look like is really taking a hard look at what is really going on on the inside of your body and how that reflects outwardly as well.
I'm Zane. I'm with the change in non-profit organization of which we plan events to help the community with bringing unity in the community, togetherness, and also teaching the community on how to protect themselves, also help the people in need, and we also help orphans and widows in Africa.
Hi, my name is Chance, and happy to be here. I'm a founder of a non-profit organization called Right to the World Mission, whereby we organize revival meetings for our communities, promote unity and well-being, and bring connection to different people, and also support different orphanage homes back home in Uganda, and support widows as well in the city.
Yeah, my name is Lauren Baker. I work at the company called Perfectus Business Consulting, and essentially we just help entrepreneurs figure out what they're doing with their business, whether that's scaling and growing. It could be that they're ready to leave a legacy and exit planning and that sort of thing. It could be they just want to increase their operational efficiency and make more money, and not just have revenue go up, but profit to follow as well. So Lauren Baker at Perfectus Business Consulting, always happy to chat about businesses.
Good afternoon. My name is Rich Lane. I'm the owner of Lane's Brains Web Development and Digital Solutions. I help small businesses locally succeed online. So anything that you could be struggling with or need a hand with digitally, I can usually help you out with that. So if anyone has any trouble, feel free to give me a call. I'd love to talk about it.
Hey everyone, Steve Hicks here with Thriving Body Fitness. Really, I just offer personalized, customized fitness solutions to people because I want people to feel like they're at the pinnacle of their own human potential.
Hey, everyone, Rob Reuter here with Idic Designs. You know, when you get onto the technology merry-go-round, it can seem a little overwhelming. And if you were to solve that, who would benefit the most? If you'd like to have a conversation about owning your platform and not just renting it, I'd love to have a conversation. Rob Reuter with Idic Designs.
My name is Marvin Sears. I'm with Tycor Title. On the title side, we make sure that properties and homes can be transacted on. On the escrow side, we make sure that all the pieces are in place to make sure that the property closes. And so, yeah, if you were buying or selling a home, I can help you. It's the deal.
Hey, I'm Debbie Ramirez. I work with Champion Empire. We are a leadership and business consulting firm, and not just for the businesses, for the individuals as well, who are going out there and making a difference in the world and working hard for themselves and their families. We actually have two things coming up that I'm really excited about. We have a workshop coming up on Tuesday of this next week called The Secret to Productivity. I know it's not what you think. And then also a course launching on Thursday called Pathway to Purpose, which is really a life design system. It's not just a class. So I'd love to talk with you about that afterward if that's helpful.
Hi, I'm Todd with Lump, LOMP.ai. That's lots of moving parts. We are an AI patented program that takes a buyer and places it in front of the seller without the buyer having to push the notification. I'm Todd with Lump, LOMP.ai.
Hello, I am Leonidas Biron, son of Jonathan and Melissa Biron. Those are my parents. That's my dad who awkwardly introduced my mom. Anyway, they're married. Nobody addressed that. They're married. That's why that was the introduction. That's why that was, yeah. Oh, anyway, I'm currently mostly focusing on school, and then I also am starting on working on a business that builds PCs. So, do you have any inquiries or just anything that would be helpful to starting a business like that? Love to hear from you.
Right on. I'm Jonathan Biron, and Mandy just walked in. Mandy, could you introduce yourself?
Mandy Karstensen with Q Home Loans. Love helping first-time buyers. So if you know anybody who's renting, send them my way for a consultation.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And then after Mandy gets them pre-approved, I go help them find the house. I'm Jonathan Biron. I am a realtor here in Spokane. I love helping people buy, sell. I love helping people get into real estate if they want to become an investor, become a realtor, any of the things real estate related. I would love to chat and just kind of get that going. And then also, like, I'm kind of looking around the room, a couple of you, we've got some other cool side projects going. So if you're into like the zany off the wall, imagining what would happen if, let's have a conversation, because I probably know the person that you need to connect with to get that thing going. So super excited. Thank you everybody for being here. This is rich. It's really nice. I do take a moment here to invite people that are watching from home. Huh?
Oh, that's rich.
That's rich. Yes. Thank you, Marvin. Yes. Keeping it real. Inviting the people at home, being here in person, there's just something that the camera can't capture. And so it's always invitational. We really like people to show up, be present with each other. And just that alone is quite magical. And so thank you everybody that's here. This is what it is because you're here. And for those of you that have never done this with us before, buckle up. It's pretty exciting. I also want to thank Dryfly for hosting us. They host us on our fourth Friday, which is our intentionality theme. And they're just a great partner and host and a great place. We're actually in their mezzanine right now where you can host events and parties. So if you have a party, or if you just want to come and have some food in their restaurant, they've got a great restaurant. And then of course they also are a distillery. So lots of spirits, and we can get into all of that. And then thank you to Rob Reuter with Idic Designs for hosting our lunch. And Tori knocks it out of the park every week. Every time we're here, it is amazing pizza, amazing veggie tray. So come for the food, stay for the conversation is literally the case here. So that is, I think that's about all we need to get into Debbie, this idea that we've been circling all month and kind of like bringing into a space of intentionality. So get us started here.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited and thank you so much for the opportunity. I think for all of us, because this is a topic that I am really excited about. And by excited, I mean that when Jonathan texted me and we started talking about this topic, I literally LOL'd. Like I was literally sitting there laughing out loud because it had just been totally that week. In fact, I believe that at that moment, I was taking a break in the middle of my day to take a walk at a park in between things because I was like, I have to carve out a little bit of time for me. I had been up since like 5:30. Usually I have this great morning routine. Instead, I was on call with the contractor for like an hour and a half. And I literally busted out of the house for 2 professional meetings in my sweats. And I was just like, wow, and covered in dog hair. Like, like the need for linter. And I was just like, it's gonna be what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
There's no way that I can put this together today. It's just I'm going out there to serve people and it is. So I think that's a great just jumping off point to I feel like there's a lot of us who are kind of in that space right now. You know, we're running pedals to the metal in important things that we know are important, things that we know serve people, things that we know have impact. And yet how do we pull that all together with all the competing priorities and things that are going on? And so I think that really the first point that I'd love to jump off into is that question, how do we stay professional? How do we represent our brands well, whether it's our own or the companies that we represent? How do we show up and serve other people with our focus on them, but also be authentic and be true to ourselves? And I'd love to hear what you got.
Okay, so I think this is such a great topic because there's definitely that really like push-pull, like being authentic, but also being professional. And for me, how that has shown up is when I'm not covered in dog hair because we don't have any, but doing, meeting with a potential client at a coffee shop is typically what I do. And there's been times where I'm like, I feel like I'm rushing to get there because we have 3 kids as well. And life has just happened, but I really try to take a moment in the car before I jump out and just take that breath and really try to focus on, okay, that happened and I'm going to go into this, but just kind of center myself a bit and then walk in with a really clearer head and a fresh start. And then when I meet with that person, there's usually something that person will say that like, oh, life is chaotic, blah, 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 blah. All this stress things have come up. And then I really have found that it has been helpful to relate to them in that moment and be like, I completely understand. Let me just share a snippet of what happened before I even came here. And it's not the whole thing, it's not the whole story, or just a snippet of some part of my life, and just be more relatable to the person. And that has, I think it's been amazing, and the person has definitely said that it has been relatable and more authentic instead of like, here, let me tell you what I can do for you. Absolutely. I love that.
And a big part of that is listening, right? You
Right.
have to show empathy, you also have to listen.
Yeah.
Make sure that you are sussing out their needs. And so in anything, whether it's sales, whether it's in relationships, it's so important to listen rather than dictate. In sales, when you listen, you find out how you're going to sell it. In relationships, you find out what they're doing.
Right. Yeah.
Well, it so resonated with me what you said, and I think it really ties into what both of you are saying as well. Of even when the branding may not have been on point, the heart and the mission never wavered. That I'm going out to help people. I'm going out and I wish that the brand was fully polished and looked this certain way and checked all these boxes, but as a human, as an authentic self, you can't always show up that way. but you can always show up with the same intention and heart. And I think that, that it really spoke to me of, those frazzled days, to just focus on, is my heart right? Is my intention right? Am I doing the right thing? All right, well, then the other stuff doesn't really matter. And to take that deep breath and just focus back on what really does matter. I love what all of you are saying.
I was just thinking, so like in an intense time period where I've got too much on my plate, like obviously get into a good rhythm and make sure you have boundaries. But the truth is, functionally, what I do, and I think it's okay, but I call it healthy compartmentalization. Just meaning like if I've got work to do today and things to do, whatever I'm feeling existentially about the world, a past deal, is to be present in that moment. I think that's the positive way to say it. So that healthy compartmentalization where I still need to be present for the things I'm doing, even as I'm stressed about other things. So I think that's the honest answer for me is, of course, rhythms are good, being grounded, having boundaries, but I think day to day, it's just learning to say, and I think maybe my parents' generation would say, just be an adult. Like, you don't feel good today, too bad, you got to work still. And it's a little bit of that, like, I'm just going to go through and be connected to what my values are, but in the moment, be able to be present.
To that degree, okay, there's three items that you said: release, be present, intention. So I've been in sales most of my life. Prior to going in and talking with a client, I scream in the car. Just to release. When you say compartmentalize, I just scream as loud as I can scream, just to depress, let it go. Whatever I was thinking about now is gone. And I go in, I'm present. Now, here's something very important in sales and in relationships. Something goes on that is not seen. And the person that you're speaking to, or even a group of people that you're speaking to, the intent will light up with them without you having to say, this is my intent today. They will get what the intent is. Now it's up to you to give them a healthy intent where it's not fogged. It's very concise, very clear, and you'll see the response because you'll engage and you'll start having a relative mutual understanding of the conversation, but the intent will be read by them, by their body language, by their mental capacity of what you're trying to present to them. So that's a secret. I'm done.
Like it.
I love that. I think there's so many things that stand out here. And really the thing that is standing out to me is that tension that I think we're all living with all the time. Of how do we show up and be our authentic selves? How does our authenticity open a door for someone else to be authentic to without us just jumping and taking over the meeting as kind of like our personal therapy space? Like, oh my God, it was so stressful. Like, yes, there's a place for that for a moment. And I think part of it maybe comes down to our relationship, right? What's our relationship? What's our intention and whatnot? I think another theme that's coming up is that we are maxed out. And something that came to mind in this conversation is, how do you handle that tension and the decision points of constantly evaluating, am I overstretched? Am I able to really put my focus into what's important and what's valuable if I'm constantly running? How are you handling that right now? And I'd love to I know we talk a lot about, I love the specifics that people handle or that people have shared. Oftentimes we'll talk in kind of generalities, which no one's doing in this group, but I'd like to invite us just to kind of share as much as you'd like to, of what you're currently trying to evaluate or what you're currently trying to figure out with those things.
So I think, and I don't know, maybe this is my inner a-hole. Oh, we're not on Facebook, I can actually say.
So,
Okay, I won't then. But anyway, no, it's something that comes up all the time, that we do have this impression that we're all maxed out all the time. I think this is, I mean, not to get Jungian, but there's kind of this collective unconsciousness that we have, that we've accepted this narrative. And I don't think it's as true as we all feel like it is sometimes. People hate when I point that out to them. But it is one of those things, we do live in a world with a lot of noise, a lot of options, a lot of distractions. And it is very easy to let that all in. But I think our capacity is much larger than we give ourselves credit for. And one of the best ways to use that capacity is in my experience, just kind of highlighting priorities, right? There's an infinite list of options of things to do. We don't we can do what's important. We just can't do everything, right? But we do have enough resources to do the things that are important. We just have to take the time to be deliberate about that priority. And I know in past Friday conversations, we had a conversation about prioritizations and what is important and how that shows up. But I think a twofold answer. One is setting your priorities, what matters to you, what absolutely are you going to give space to? And then also deciding that you're not going to follow the common social norms of, if you're alive in 2026, you have to feel busy and overwhelmed and overmaxed. I don't think it's as true as we get it forced on us to be.
Dude, that super resonates, man. That's such a good contrarian thought.
I choose not to be overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I actively choose not to be
I
busy.
agree. People get stressed out, especially with like social media posts. I'm trying out this on social media. Well, I kind of am, all you five big guns, but but really, you don't have to get these things right. That's a cognitive load. You can just unload. You don't have to do any of those things. Like for me, like practically, it's going through a walk through the park with my dog, not listening to anything, just let the brain go where it goes. Like that's how I think I manage that cognitive dissonance sometimes, trying to be authentic and be professional. Is those liminal spaces. You'll hear me say this a lot, but those liminal spaces where there's no real guidance, but you're just kind of letting stuff happen. You're right, that matters. So but that resonates a lot. It's really good.
So I was at a mastermind or online mastermind this week, and we had a guest speaker, Michael Burnoff, who wrote a book called Average Sucks. And it's really I'm in a couple of chapters already, and I think he really hits it well about the way we stay human in all of this. But he was talking about something that I had never really thought about before that made a lot of sense to me. And one of the things about stress, is and all of this is there are 4 hormones that we operate under, right? Cortisol, then you have dopamine, and then you have serotonin and oxytocin are the primary ones. And he was trying to tell us that you can actually guide people to have the kind of response and reaction that you want. But he told a model that I was going, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So he said, never again. When you get under stress, you're feeling that cortisol, you say, never again, I'm not gonna do this. And he says, and then you bounce the other side. It's like, what I want is, this, and you're trying to get a dopamine hit. And so we get caught in this back and forth. Never again. What I want is, and he said, the problem is if you get trapped there, says you need a way out. He says there's 2 things that hold those things apart. On one side, you have identity, who you are. And on the other side, you have people, who you engage with and who you choose to have around you. And he says, so if you want to avoid the bouncing back and forth between stress and mindless, dopamine hits, you have to focus on what's my identity, what am I trying to accomplish, and then who am I serving, and it makes sense to me because I can think of my own practice when I am going in to teach the university. What I will do a lot of times is I will come into the classroom early. I will have all this stuff going on behind me, but I know for the next 75 minutes, I'm here for those students. And so I will literally just quietly, go to a back corner where I can look outside, I can focus, and all I'm doing is saying, for the next 75 minutes, I'm here for these students. I am their, professor, I am their guide, I am the person who is going to help them live a better life. That's who I am and what I'm here to do.
So I hear intentionality, but also are you time blocking that time out of the day? Are you saying, okay, this is a non-negotiable? This is what I'm doing for that 75 minutes? Yeah.
When I, in those classes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do have time blocks. Yeah, I use a lot of time blocking on the calendar, you know, for the things that I have intention. Like for instance, my time block for this starts at 10:45 and goes till 3 o'clock. So, you know, it's like nothing else gets scheduled during this time because my identity is I am participating in Friday conversations to help anyone and everyone I can engage with.
I like that. There's so many things that are swirling here that I would just love to just go down all the trails all at once. But this idea of identity and how you articulated that made me think of, in some moments, I am predominantly a father. Like that is like my identity. I show up as dad to 3 amazing kids. Sometimes I'm husband. Like I am married and I show up as husband. And those two roles come together as family person who has a family. Other times I'm a son. Other times I'm a realtor. Other times and those identities there's a similarity because they're all this particular skin sack that has a personality and all the things. And so like Leonidas recognizes me when I'm in realtor mode as that's my dad. And at the same time, it is a slightly different dad. And the dad that shows up to the 15-year-old is different than the dad that shows up for the 8-year-old. And then, you know, I'm not a professor, but like that, there's just all these that, right? Like host of a podcast or all these different, and I think that like remembering back to school days, like high school, like there was this cognitive dissonance. Somebody said there was this sensation of I'm different when I'm at school than I am with my parents, particularly around like the certain words that you use with your friends, but you didn't use around your parents. And there was like that dissonance was very uncomfortable. And I think that we all try to create a persona that is as integrous as possible. And yet the reality of it is that we do show up differently in different spaces and for different reasons. When I'm talking to a client, it's a completely different conversation than to my son or to Lauren, who's a great buddy that, you know, we were just having a text conversation this morning about some really off the chart stuff. And that's like, that can't show up necessarily with a client. Lucky for me, my clients are very diverse. So like I inevitably will have that conversation with one client, but just not another one. And then you get into like the whole scope of like Republican Democrat. It's like, oh, we're going to have a very different conversation today than I had yesterday. So yeah, there's a lot there that I appreciate you bringing that, Rob.
I think something that I think about is what you're gonna allow into your space. And a very real thing that happens to all of us is we have those people in our lives that tend to bring more drama. And something I've really had to learn over time is that just not letting it stick to me. So that can be their reality and their thing that they're working through or navigating, but that doesn't have to be my reality. And I actually choose to have a different path. And that path can be a more centered person, a more person that is present with that person at the time, but not bring it with me.
I love that. We're having so many good conversations around different aspects of it, kind of like Jonathan pointed out. We've talked about identity. We've talked about demeanor, like how do we show up in a situation and how do we hold space for others and be there to serve while also being our true selves and actually use that as an open door. I think what Melissa's segueing into is talking about our practices. You know, what are those practices that we have when it comes down to relationships, you know, the boundaries that we exercise, And we choose to give space and time and mental capacity to, what are the practices that we use throughout our day? Healthy habits, meditation, whatever that looks like, to make sure that at the beginning of the day or throughout the day, that we are being whole and complete within ourselves before we get into our day or as play.
Well, Melissa was talking about, some people like just like to bring drama to our life. It's like, I just tell you.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God.
But at the same time, I was also thinking, Byron was talking about, his intentionality of showing up and being a dad too.
Yeah.
And that's probably like the situation I think of, like, I have to be super intentional about, being a dad for like my kids, because I don't live with them. And so that's like something that, like when I'm going through my day, I have to be super intentional to make sure like I show up and like I make that phone call them each night, show up to the games, things like that. And then at the end of the day, like I can tell myself, like I'm making my effort to be dad, to be there. And so like that's kind of like what I think of like intentionality. Because when they come to my house, they get a different version of what they have at their house. And so you just have to be like, I just have to be very intentional about like how I am when they're at my house, and try to be dad, like things that I'm doing. And then just kind of also remember that, it goes both ways too. So they have expectations and things that going on at their other house, like that too. So, I just try to think, tell myself like in my mind, like how important, like when I'm prioritizing things, like how important is this going to be 15 minutes from now, 5 weeks from now, 5 years from now, and let that kind of play into it. And also just remind myself that everyone else always has stuff going on, like that we can't see. So don't let that, play too much into your, way you're acting. So.
And I mean, if I'm being honest, I haven't been great at, separating these different things, separating my job from being with family and friends and so forth. It's really hard to do in many ways. And so it's a constant exercise. You have to make sure that you reevaluate every so often, which I do constantly, because, in many of our industries, you get caught up in where's the next deal going to come from? Or, in a past life, I very, very stressed out every day, and I bring it home with me. And and I had to make changes in my life to ensure that my family isn't necessarily getting the wrong person coming to the door each night.
Yeah.
So, and it's like I said, it's constant exercise.
Right.
Right. I'm continuously trying to make myself better and ensure that I'm the dad I want to be, I'm the husband I want to be, and then at the same time being the salesman, being the businessman that I want to be as well. So
Makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool, because how many of us actually deal with that? Like how many of us, that's a constant daily battle?
Never stressed out.
Especially
Nope.
with everyone except for Todd. But I totally get that, because this morning I'm like just super enjoying the fact that my husband and I work from home, and that both happen to be in the kitchen at the same time, literally sipping a cup of coffee and talking together. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And then I'm also like, hang on, I'm gonna do something while we're talking. And I'm like, wait a second, what am I doing? And go back to it. But at the same time, we both work from home. So we are like to be working, right? So always that tension can be so challenging.
Intentionality is such, I think that, all of us could talk about this every day, because when you're a 9 to 5, you get to relinquish a certain amount of that. You are the worker person when you're sitting in a specific zone. This office signifies that I'm now the worker. They're dictating a lot of what I'm doing during the day, the goals, so a lot of that gets relinquished when you're a self, directed business. you don't relinquish any of that. And oftentimes you don't have any specific environment that even triggers those shifts in priority. So you have to be so intentional of either setting up shifts or really, like you said, constant reevaluation, because you're the director of every piece of that ship. And sometimes they're not even, they might be at odds. And so you have to figure out how to navigate that. So I love this, the layers. This is something that, as business owners, as, entrepreneurs, we are struggling with, every single day. And it's the blessing and the curse, because it's what allows you to be having those moments of coffee, being more present, being able to shift priorities as life happens. That's the bummer of being at the office. When your priorities shift, nothing else does. And that is the push and pull. So, choose your hard, but this is hard. So I love these. And I don't know if it's because you talked about being with a contractor at the beginning, but the entire time that's really been resonating with me. And I've just been thinking about, projects that I've undertaken with contractors. And at the beginning, they are so overwhelming because there's minute little, what finishes are you going to choose? What are you, and before you even have any sort of plan, it feels impossible. And then that's why you start with figuring out, okay, what's my color palette? What's my theme? And I may shift in between that. I may reevaluate and go, oh, actually those colors are disgusting. I need these colors. You change, but once you've made those decisions, all of the other decisions become a lot easier, because they're like, are they in line with what I've already decided? No, it's not. Get it away. Oh yeah, oh my word, that's the missing piece. Or, oh my word, this changes the whole vision. So it changes, but that I think is so poignant of, if you don't have the color palette, then you really are being tossed around and you are being absolutely overwhelmed. And the more specific that you can get that, the more thrilled that you are, or maybe more relaxed with what's coming, because you're just really able to filter pretty easily of like, does this align or does it not?
I love that, Mandy. And I think kind of bringing back to Stephen's point, which I kind of had bookmarked in my head for like, we need to come back to that. That part is so key. And really kind of leads to the question of right now, what are you doing in your lives? What's working for you and what are you grappling with that maybe is not working for you? When it comes to that prioritization part, choosing the color palette before you start to keep coming back to it, really kind of knowing the identity, the purpose, the who am I serving, being on mission, so that when everything does go crazy, I'm able to go like, but as long as I accomplish that today, that's the important, right?
One of my favorite exercises that I do, it's not really an exercise, it's just something that I do. Socrates said like the unexamined life is not worth living. And so at the start of the month, I like to do like a monthly review in a few different categories. I do one for my personal life, I do one for my business, and one for my health and fitness. But it's essentially each area has 6 or 7 different categories. I rank them. I talk about highlights, lowlights, areas of opportunity, and then whatever category seems to be at the lowest, just try to enhance balance along the life wheel of sorts. That area of opportunity is just something that I try to put more focus and more intentionality. And then in the other categories, those areas of opportunities, we just kind of have them in the peripheral if opportunities come up to address that. But I do think taking the time to do a monthly review of like what went well, what would you like to do differently, what do you want to do moving forward, just kind of sets the tone, right? We talked about identities. It lets you choose who you want to be, what you want to do. We talked about priorities. It also allows you to identify what is actually going to move the needle and make me feel better about who I want to be and all that stuff. But that's when I'm at my very best. I'm pretty consistent doing that each month with the reviews. When I let the reviews slip and I drift and I try to just bumble through the daily chaos, it's a lot of wasted efforts and a lot of leaky efforts, and it doesn't feel like you make progress towards anything. So that's my big suggestion. I like doing a monthly reflection.
Yes,
Powerful. I think that's very good.
One of the things that I've noticed throughout the conversation, and it keeps updating this whole thing that I'm going to go on as the conversation continues, a lot of people have been talking about before they go into a meeting or something like that, they have a way of processing or like packaging all of their emotions into something else. And then other people have been talking about how they deal with those things. And this is all new to me. I'm like, yeah. Some of you may be like, yeah, duh. But this is very cool to me. Anyway, I'm trying to figure out like what everybody does to take that package of emotions and open it intentionally at the right time. Because as you said, if you just open it right before you walk into the door, before you go home, that's not fair to anybody in your household.
Yeah.
That like, it's not great to do that. So like, when do you find time to deal with that package of emotions?
What a poignant question.
I'd say, so think about these rhythm things, because I think this is how I would answer that question is, like for me, so I'm a theist. So the rhythms that I practice are sort of a morning, mid, evening, and late night, and sort of intentional prayer. And then I have a weekly rhythm of eating together with other folks who are sort of aligned that way. And what those rhythms do for me in terms of the moments is it helps me get grounded in my identity. Going back to what you said, Rob, get grounded in your identity. Community informs my identity just as my identity informs the community. So there's this relationship going. And so for that rhythm, for me, when I'm grounded that way, then in those moments where I existentially have no idea what to do, it's just like, okay, I already know what like the main thing is. And I can operate in the liminal space where I don't know, I don't feel comfortable, I don't like the situation, whatever the emotions are. Because I'm grounded in who I think I am and a community that reinforces, so they mutually reinforce each other. So that's how I talk about it for myself. Yeah.
I love the main thing. I haven't heard that in a while. And I was like, ooh, that kind of feels like it's boiling down to, like the main thing. And as long as you're on track with that, you can be in the sweatpants with, it would be cat hair for me. But as long as the main thing still fits, you're like, hey, this isn't normally how I show up, but I'm showing up because it is the main thing.
I look like,
it's really good.
I look like fill in the blank. I don't feel good about who I am, right? But I can still be here knowing, okay, this isn't how I always feel.
Yes. Yeah.
Totally. And I think to your point, I never thought about that until this second. I think probably a few years ago, I would have just called in sick, rescheduled the meeting,
Yeah.
which I think there's a place for, right? But it was like, no, I'm going to show up because I believe that this is important. I'm here to serve this person. I can deal with how I look today.
Yeah. And the branding is super important, but it's not the main thing. And so I love for the branding to be right, but
And that
it doesn't have to be.
It leads into your identity too, because the authentic self isn't the whatever, for me, it's dog hair as well. That would be like, that's all true. And it's the authentic me. And here I am, but I can still be present in the authentic me in this mess of a presentation. This isn't necessarily my heart.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, you'll see me carrying these around all the time. And that's because, one of my mentors, taught me years ago that you live your life sequentially. You can't compartmentalizing is a nice term, but you can't just wall it off because your brain is working on it. And so one of the things to do is to get it out of here in a way that your brain can let go and say, okay, I did something with it. Maybe you'll come back to it. Maybe not. There are things I write, I have over 10 years of these. And I have never gone back more than, 6 months to go find something that I had to pick up again. So getting it out was part of that evolution of the idea. And the next time it comes up, it's gonna have a different form. So those are important to me. And the other part of it, is Finite and Infinite Games, my favorite book, but he talks a lot about just the awareness that what we put on when we go into a setting is not who we are. It is the role we play. So I'm here to be somebody you can have confidence in, that I'm listening, that I'm giving you my best. What else is going on inside? is not relevant. And I don't pick up my persona and say, I'm the person you need, but I'm also not going to spill everything else that is going on in here. I'm going to play my role.
Hmm.
I love that. Such powerful stuff. And I love what you were talking about with the writing it out part. Just because I want to stick for a minute with what Leonidas's question was. I think that was such a powerful one, because what we're talking about this week and this month is the mental health part. And that part, you know, I know we've had these conversations, but we have this stigma, even still. I think it's vastly different after the pandemic. Thank God. Like finally we've acknowledged that mental health is a thing and that we need therapists. Like finally, right? But I think there's still kind of this stigma around like, oh, someone has mental health issues. We all have mental health issues, and we're all responsible for cultivating and for our mental health hygiene, right? That's part of our practices. Our minds are amazing and beautiful and unstable and influenceable, right? That's just part of the human condition. And so how we steward that and how we cultivate that, I think coming back to that part was, where do you process those emotions, right? Where do you process that unload? And Rob brought it back to a form of somatic release. So writing is a form of somatic release. Exercise is a form of somatic release. Todd going in his car and screaming is a form of somatic release. It's actually also, I learned this from a friend of mine who's a fitness coach who deals in kind of the adaptive fitness space. She talks about doing a practice like that before a meeting, before something, to turn on your fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. You're turning on your fight, which you need to be in. You need to be in that different space in order to go and to serve well and to have mindset on. So what are those, coming back to that, like release, what are the things that you do to release, or what are the things you do to connect with yourself? And then we got one more area to dive into.
Yeah, I want to try to condense everything to answer Leonidas's question. Leonidas's question was like, when you identify something you need to process, how do you process? And I think there's 3 P's. Lauren mentioned people. Rob and Debbie kind of mentioned practices. But I think there's one Mandy kind of hinted at earlier. There's also places. So there's places, people, and practices to help process. It's a lot of P's. Alliteration's fun. You just say that over and over. Process with people, places, and practices.
I like that.
I do too.
So I want to do a couple things. One, we like to slow down a little bit towards the end to allow our quieter, more contemplative guests that you got something you want to share, but you haven't quite figured out how to put it in words. So I'm going to share a couple thoughts here, but with an encouragement that invitationally, if you haven't gotten a chance to share yet and you want to, that we're going to kind of like slow us rapid folks down a little bit and give a little bit of breathing room for that. The second thing I want to speak to has just been resonating for me, and I've been trying to put this into words, is the word responsibility. And it came up when we were getting this ready. And when I saw the word responsibility, it just hit me hard. And there's a lot of layers to this, and I'm not going to try to unpack it at all, but we choose what we take responsibility for. And Melissa said it really well, and that's what triggered it for me. And there are some things that, you know, like I take responsibility for my kids. I chose to have kids. And so I choose that as a responsibility. And at the same time, it is a responsibility that I get to choose. I could choose not to take that responsibility. I could choose to, we have stories of dads that just change their mind and go live a different life. It happens. And so it is a choice. And yet for me, that's a choice that I've made that is not revisitable. And I still do revisit it in the sense that I say, this is a choice that I have, and I can integrate with it that way. And I intentionally choose it again and again and again. And so that reinforcement, and so that's where like my responsibility to a client is different than that. And there's sometimes has to be a reevaluation of, is this my responsibility? And this is the part that I have to really keep my energy focused. I tend to take on this sense of responsibility for the whole world, right? Every problem, I drive by somebody that's standing on the street with a cardboard sign and I want to fix them. I want to help them. I want to find out how to, I just get into this way overwhelmed of just taking responsibility for all the things. And I need somebody like my wife who can remind me frequently, you don't have to fix everybody. You're not responsible for everybody. And so that shows up in extended family. It shows up in all of these spaces where we picked up a burden of responsibility that wasn't ours to carry. And that some of those are, if we just let go of those and say, you know what, that's not my problem to fix. That's not my problem to solve. Stephen, I love that people, places, practices. And I think Rich can resonate with this. Rich and I hang out in the sauna at the gym pretty frequently. Like our schedules sometimes overlap, sometimes don't, but I love the sauna. And the sauna it's a place, it's a practice, and there's frequently people in there. I am not the guy that goes in and wants to like zone out on music. Like I want to talk to people in the sauna and we have a good time. So that's a little bit of an answer for me, one of the spaces that I like to process that. But I'm opening it up if there's somebody that hasn't gotten a chance to share yet that wants to jump in.
Everybody said pieces of what I think already. Sanctuary for me is very important, and being very deliberate about reserving time every day to tap into that sanctuary, however that looks. And so everything everyone said came out in that facet. And I would even say that I think you said it perfectly. People, practices, and places. You know what I mean? And giving yourself permission to allow other people to be that vessel for you. You know what I mean? I think part of what I was thinking as people were talking was the relationship we have to the social world, and that connective piece. And sometimes we kind of downplay the way we're socialized into thinking in a particular way, and how we view ourselves as fathers, and why that's a responsibility. Right? Maybe that might be a larger understanding as to why that's so important, right? Friendships, and there's people that just don't rely on their friends to do those kinds of things that makes them feel like a burden. You know what I mean? And so it's like the way our relationship is to how we're socialized, I think is very important. And it's just something that I think needs to be looked at a lot more, intuitively, right?
Yeah.
There's a saying that a colleague of mine that said, when you squeeze an orange, you don't get grape juice.
It's true.
Right.
And so what comes out is what's in the surface. And I think that's the journey a lot of us are on, is when you start to peel those layers back, how do you slowly begin to examine those dark corridors of how we move and operate? I think that's the journey, I think, is be an ultimate human being in that regard.
Yeah.
We're all sort of we're sort of in our own little algorithms, if you will, but I think the quest is still the same. Is how do we get to that place? Yeah. So that's what I was thinking about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love it.
Mic drop. Thanks, Vermel.
I love that word sanctuary that you use. And I think that really kind of is a good, just kind of opening it up into that last part. So we talked about that our topic is carrying it well mostly, with mostly being that key part that we're all resonating with today. When responsibility, exhaustion, and restoration all live in the same world. What is that restoration for you? Yeah, what is the restoration piece for you when it comes to we're carrying so many things? We're choosing responsibility, right? To Stephen's point, maybe it's not so much. Maybe we have more capacity than we think when we're prioritizing it, when we're living on purpose in our mission, right? But what about the restoring ourselves part, right? Where does that live for you in the middle of the busy, the exhaustion, the crazy, the flat out?
So I'll speak to that because Lauren mentioned liminality, and I agree that you use that a lot. Like but I feel like we just like came on that at the same time, and we've both been. So liminal for anybody that isn't familiar with it is basically the space between. So if you think about like a light being on and a light being off, The liminal space is it's not quite on yet, but it's turning on or it's turning off. So liminal spaces are just this, I love it. And to your question of the restoration, I think that we have this sort of these rhythms that we all occupy, right? Like I'm up, I'm excited, and then I'm sad. And sometimes we live in one side of that and don't spend much time in the other. I started recently, maybe 2 years now, when we get into that fall, winter weather where like the animal world hibernates, I've tried to allow myself to be a little bit sadder, a little bit less go-getter. I kind of just allow myself to go into a hibernation mode of sorts. Now, that's not to, we do this. So you guys see me every Friday through the winter. I still have energy. I still do things, but I allow that my rhythm is just going to be a little bit different than it is in the spring when life is springing forth. And so when spring happens, I just suddenly feel this like, yes, we're coming out of it. And so I've been exploring that for me personally, where it's like, okay, I'm kind of a little bit down. I'm a little sad and allowing myself to even, I just recently was introduced to the concept. I don't know who the author was. I don't know but the idea of just naming what you're feeling. And like, I am sad right now. And like not explaining it, not justifying it, not figuring out how to not be sad anymore, just
Snowboarding.
He's happy.
is
Yeah,
that for the
like-
winter?
yeah.
Be happy.
You know.
So that has been a practice that I just started that I'm like, ooh, this is kind of cool. I'm feeling anxious right now. All eyes are looking at me. I'm not actually anxious right now.
That is huge though. Naming it
Oh my
is,
gosh.
I think part of, would go into that process category. And that is a big one. I'm glad that came out because just naming it, I'm feeling really upset. Sometimes you just don't know. And if you keep bottling it down and then you're just like, even just expressing it is so helpful. Naming it is
Yeah.
really big.
I think that would fall in the somatic thing that you were talking about.
yeah.
For sure.
In our conversation around restoration, we think, at least I think of restoration as being poured in.
Mm.
Pouring into myself, allowing myself to be poured into, getting around the people who pour into me.
Yeah.
But sometimes there's an aspect of it, it really just means to put back,
Hmm.
right? To restore is to put back in that state. And sometimes that's just naming something. It's the somatic release.
Well,
It's just,
the restoration for me,
I like.
this is pretty intense, and I'll let you in on a little secret. Friday conversations.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's restoration for me. I look forward to it. I plan it. I mean, when I leave here, all my little contacts in my little brain, because that's what ADD people do. They have conversations in their brain, multiple, but it'd be making sure my next Friday conversation time is allocated
Mm.
as I leave here today. So my restoration is 100% this place.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well,
It's a great place.
well, on that note, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, restoration, I would say talking to someone. Usually talking to my wife. So whenever things are so much in my head, the moment I open up to speak, I feel like the entire load is off.
Mm.
Yeah, she may not say anything, she may not do anything, but the fact that again, naming it, just spoke it out.
Mm.
Once I spoke it out, I feel the burden is off my shoulders. Yeah, a release, thank you. A release and meditation and prayer.
Oh, so good.
Yeah.
So good.
So she is a safe space for you.
From
Yeah.
And I think that is the key right there,
Mm.
is not everyone is a safe space, like your ex-wife, not safe. You really named it. But finding those people, Mandy is a safe space for me.
Mm.
John is a safe space for me. But having those people that are a safe space for you
Mm.
is so vital, and not everyone has that. Yeah.
Mm.
I've just noticed something about, I pay attention to people, I know we're kind of.
Yeah.
I feel like it's sort of like human behavior a little bit, which is like, if you watch people closely, you'll notice that once they get overloaded with something,
there's a release that they have, whether it's a twitch or it's a head nod. It'll be a release of something that's happy or painful or cringy. And I think there's smaller cycles of that, but I also think there's larger processes of that as well. So for a lot of times, I think having that release is very important, and it just looks different for everybody based on how everything is sort of made up in their own life. It might be a person. It might be playing video games. It might be taking a shower or being in the sauna. But there's that moment where the pressure has a chance to fizzle on out. You know what I mean? And as far as restoring, again, I think that's a personality thing. We're built different in terms of our personality types and what we look to for refueling. Some of us like to have, it's more like a cup to get filled in, and maybe like a couple of hole in it or something like that, where it kind of drains out with life pressures, but fills it back in. In your case, it might even be like a battery, where it gets charged by being in an environment where there's a lot of positivity.
Yeah.
I mean, and so I think that's part of our journey, is to figure out what is it about our personalities that puts us in those spaces where we can be more deliberate about it. So it's
Oh, I love
All
that.
right. Well, we do need to wrap up. All of that segues perfectly into a couple of things. One, the invitation to come be here on a Friday. It really is an exciting, it's just great. I love it. Todd, I love that you love it. I love those of you that are regularly showing up, and the visitors that we get. So for all the reasons, come show up, except this is the really big segue, not next Friday. So one of our rhythms is that every once in a while, there's a fifth Friday. And at least at this point, our decision is to just not do Friday conversations on a fifth Friday. So we will not be here. We will not be at Innovia. We will not be anywhere. The next one will be at Hotel Indigo on the first Friday of June. Wow, we are just cruising along this year. But I do want to say once again, thank you to Debbie with Champion Empire for being our host today. Thank you to Rob Ruder, Idic Designs, for our food, and Dryfly for hosting us here. And everybody that was in the room, thank you all for your contribution. This was really an awesome conversation, and I can't wait to see what next month.